before Prop 47 was passed last year, DNA samples were taken for all felony arrestees throughout the state. With the passage of Prop 47, a number of arrestees or categories were not included in that, that being drug crimes, theft, forgery, and fraud crimes. With that, the DNA samples dropped from approximately 15,000 samples to 5,000 that we were collecting for monthly analysis. And the trouble with that is a lot of folks that were committing sex crimes and murders were not being caught for those crimes. And what the most important thing about the change in this DNA bill that I'm sponsoring is that a lot of folks are involved in plenty of other crimes, including those drug crimes and theft crimes, and law enforcement quite frequently arrests them. And later on, these DNA tests, which were the standard until this year, resulted in a number of convictions. And as you'll hear from some folks today, some of these arrestees that were found were 20 years in the making to arrest individuals responsible for some of these crimes, some of these heinous crimes. And hopefully, with a modification in this, we'll start collecting DNA samples again. I'm not trying to change Prop 47. What my intent is to make sure we include those categories for misdemeanor arrest and convictions. And that's the most important thing here. It's really about the families. So hopefully with this change in this and support from my colleagues here, we can once again make sure our streets are safe.
The names and the numbers demonstrate the passion and the need for this law. Why does it matter with theft and drugs? Because the data shows the correlation. If you look at the Department of Justice studies, there is a direct correlation between theft and drug crimes and solving violent crime. If you look at other states that have done this, collecting for misdemeanors, New York, countless, over 1,000 cases solved from these types of collections. I ask you all to remember the names and the numbers. That's the need for this legislation, and I have tremendous gratitude to Assemblyman Cooper and his colleagues for supporting this legislation.
It's about families. It's about victims in the past, and you're going to hear some family members speak today. It's about current victims who their crimes aren't solved yet as we're waiting for DNA samples. And it's about future victims. Think about this. If we don't stop this, we're going to have more victims that are kidnapped, raped, and murdered. That is the truth.
In 1992, the district attorney at that time at Yolo County thought that he had finally figured out who had perpetrated the crime and had so viciously murdered these two young people. And he went to trial with 4 very unsavory people that he thought were responsible for the death. And they thought he had found a copycat murder. In order to prepare for this trial, a blanket that had been in at the scene of the crime was re-examined, and for the first time, DNA was identified at the scene of the crime, and none of these unsavory people, their DNA matched, and that case fell apart. Kate called Anne Marie, and she ran it through a database, and in August of 2002, that's 10 years later, they found a match, and it was of a man who was in Washington State, in the prison there for molesting 2 young children. And it was a perfect match. So finally, in January of 2013, this man was convicted of murdering these 2 children and now awaits his sentence in San Quentin. My position about DNA, rather than the footprint of your new baby on the birth certificate, I think there should be a DNA profile. If your identity is so important, why not use the most perfect scientific device we have today to identify you, of all people, with the chances of a match from someone else infinitesimally small? And so I would certainly support having the DNA in the bank.
Just think about if it was your family if there's a chance to ever catch that individual, it's through DNA. And that's really the most important thing. It's not about changing Prop 47. It's making sure we ensure that our individuals are protected. I spent 30 years in law enforcement. I have 4 daughters. I can't be there to always protect them. God forbid something happening to them. But if it ever did, I would hope we would catch those individuals responsible for that. This is a simple fix. If you're convicted of a misdemeanor, certain misdemeanors, you're going to give a DNA sample. They swab your cheek. That's pretty much non-invasive. The vast majority of the public out there obeys the laws and follow the laws. These folks have a habit. These sexual predators that are involved in drugs and theft. That's really what it comes down to. And think about it. It's not intrusive. So this is not about Republican and Democrats. We have both sides here right now. We're concerned about the citizens of California and doing the best we can for them to ensure their safety. So think about it. Put yourself in those shoes. And there are other victims' families here. If you're sitting here right now, think about it. You would want justice. And also, let's not forget, DNA has exonerated a number of people across this country. So it's an important thing. It works both ways. We just want to be careful and ensure it.